What's up, my people? Welcome to Fellowship Bible Church's Sermon Spotlight, where we're coming at you each and every week with a fresh weekend to debrief in an effort to send biblical truth. What better way to do that than by the power of conversation? I'm one of your hosts, Caleb Pearson. Joining me in the semi-new podcast booth room thing, Mark Francis. Mark, how are you?
What's up? You're
Nice.
a little further away. We've got fun chairs. If you're not watching, if you're just listening, we're going a little more.
We're trying to be a little more open, a little more
open,
transparent,
a little more casual.
Yeah.
You know, we're laid back. All we need is a little fireplace right next to us, and we can have a fireside
cozy
chat.
fire would be awesome.
Yeah, you're feeling cold, aren't you?
A little chilly. I like your Christmas-ish sweater.
Yeah, I told Mike Lukens this was just a nod to the Eagles winning. I'm not a fan of the Eagles, but
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
you're welcome, Cheesehead.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's back with us in the pulpit this weekend, Tim Sanford. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I've been caffeined up, and I don't normally caffeine up.
So you're locked and loaded. You're
Good.
Let's go.
I need some more.
Speed this thing up.
So good. We'll go about 90 minutes here. But let's jump into a Sunday in review. Mark Francis, I'll come your way first, and we'll see where we go from there.
We're still in Mark 9.
Yep.
And you actually referenced Mark Carey and how he references the book of Mark as the discipleship manual.
Yeah.
And so this was a passage that was just teed up for you to hit the home run right in your wheelhouse, discipleship of Jesus just talking to his disciples, working with them, figuring things out, and it's so funny because when I read this stuff, I'm still stuck in the rut of just looking at the narrative in the story.
Yeah.
And so having you guys find the heart and the tone of the passage and seeing this as discipleship moment to me is still helpful because I'm still just not catching it.
Sure.
After the many times I've been reading through Mark here in these last several months, I look at the stories. I'm like, that's a cool story, or what's going on with the narrative. That's the better
compelling.
Yes. And so here, having you guys, that's kind of just my question: is that Caleb, did you guys see this and said this is a discipleship thing? Tim, take the ball and run with it. Or what goes on behind the scenes for you guys to really see the heart of the passage? Because to me, that's fascinating. Because I'm still I'm not a general onlooker. I'm involved and invested in the worship team and the worship ministry, but just you guys have that perspective of seeing the scripture and pulling out the true spiritual nuggets in that discipleship mode. So
how would you answer that?
I mean, I feel like by the time, for this book specifically, we're launching this preaching team model at the same time as we're deciding to study this. And so I feel like Mark Carey came and we were already talking about the heart behind the book. And so like, as you're saying, to keep being reminded of that, authorial intent and the original audience. Those are two things we often don't think about when we study scripture. Yeah. And so to keep those two things in mind, the authorial intent, the original audience, helped, I think, us arrive at that conclusion. Yeah. Because I think the Gospels at large tend to just be a focus on evangelism or a study of Jesus' life or his active ministry. But I know for my study time, it's been fruitful. Put myself in the shoes of a believer in Rome. How do I read something like this and not just go, neat, good for them? What was it about Mark's writing and the detailing of these stories that is beneficial for a believer then, thus beneficial for a believer today?
Yeah.
That's what bridge brings this scripture to me in Winchester, Virginia?
Yeah.
It's not the bridge from Jesus' original audience to me. It's the bridge from who Mark is writing
We're
to.
just getting caught up in the story itself, which is where I'm finding myself.
Yes.
Right. And I would agree with what he's saying there. That's the backdrop. I think one of the privileges of having a teaching team or preaching team, we call it, is that, we remind each other of that kind of stuff in our dialogue together because we always prep in advance for those, whoever's going to be teaching next, right? So, I agree with all that. But I would also say that I'm really glad that you're describing it the way that you did.
Just being honest.
But the truth of the matter is we're all there.
Yeah.
This isn't like a group of 4 individuals who really got something extra going on. Here's hands down. Okay. I'm assigned that. It wasn't like, oh, Tim, this will be great for you because you're the discipleship guy. We're just looking at these different passages, who's available on any given weekend, and we assigned all of that out. So to me, that's God who already orchestrated that. So typically, whoever's assigned to something is going to be studying it and then comes to our meeting with quite a bit prepared so that the rest of us are going to engage on that. So that happened, and I talked to these guys about the things that I was thinking about, and then there's still a lot of time between then and when I'm going to actually teach. Well, lo and behold, at the same time, and I put this up right on the screen for us.
Discipleship is helping another appropriate the grace of God.
Right.
Yes.
This had been stewing in my mind for quite some time, been dabbling with it, just kind of wrestling. And honestly, I had already kind of studied and kind of prepared for what we were going to do. So the ingredients were already there, and I had this on my desk. And it just looking at it while I was mulling that, and it was almost like the Lord just kind of clicked. Mm-hmm. There it went. Mm. And you could see all the ingredients of that, just in my opinion, fall right into place. Of this is such a classic model of what the Lord's doing discipleship wise, and it fits with this. So, I mean, I just raced home and began to just like going as fast as I could on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, the Lord gets the credit for it, because he's the one really who brought it all. And I know that can sound very, spiritualistic kind of thing, but it really, we're not that brilliant, to be honest with you. We're just trusting the Lord to give us some insight.
I mean, of course you say that. And obviously there's Spirit-led study and preparation going in advance. In us and singing worship time, we say the same thing.
Yes.
We planned some of this, but
he coordinates it all.
There's no way that we would have thought X, Y, and Z would have happened in that service. So I get that. But Jesus is the ultimate teacher.
Yes.
Right? And he's the ultimate, just conveyor of information to people that need it in that moment. And so that phrase, to be able to appropriate the grace of God, and how the story of a child was a part of that is a neat, almost just basically he was using the kid as a prop, right? If you say it that way, to be able to hammer his point home. So as a teacher yourself, do you appreciate what that looked like? And,
because he was doing a number of things. So Howard Hendricks would say that one of the teaching tools for you is that you should have meaningful activity in what you're teaching, and that helps people remember as they're engaged in that activity, right? It's meaningful to them. It's not just activity, but it's something that's meaningful. Well, here's the Lord with these guys, calls them all together, and now has an activity with them where he's putting that child there and then picking that child up and then speaking to them. All of that helped them to engage. And of course, then we see John going, well, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but we had this guy doing this and we rebuked him, right? Now the Lord's got him. They're right in there with him, and they're still not getting it, but they're wrestling with that stuff. And
let me just share something too on this idea that discipleship is helping another appropriate the grace of God. So we go out to Zaxby's, the preaching team. Tim hits Mike and I with that statement, and this is weeks ago now, and he just says, "What do you think of this?" And so he says it. We obviously meditate on it, and I have really enjoyed continuing to wrestle with it and think about it. And so obviously Micah and I, Mark's literally overseas, so it's just the three of us talking about this. I started asking him what he means by which word and how do we arrive at this.
You were the one punching holes in.
Oh, they were all. There was a number of people part of this,
but not because I didn't like it. It's because I loved it. So I said, "Wow, okay, what does appropriate mean?" You can imagine where the conversation is very fun. So then the question is, I hear this from Tim. It encourages me, because up to this point, discipleship is kind of this jello to the wall, very hard thing to nail down. I like it when you can summarize and say and articulate something. And so I'm kind of like, man, we might never have a succinct way of describing discipleship. So anyway, Tim shares it with us. I leave that lunch and I'm like, man, that's cool. I wrote it down. It's my lock screen on my computer still. And I've just been thinking about it. So then I see, as we get closer to this past weekend, he's gonna say this Sunday morning. So I think two things. One, awesome that the whole congregation's about to hear this, because then they get to maybe feel what I felt, the excitement and the rest with it. But then the other thing that happened was I was like, wait a second, Tim, are you gonna just throw that out there? What about the passage? What about sticking to the what matters? And so I just want to say, it's so cool that it's part of the intro, even literally in your sermon notes. Discipleship is helping another appropriate the grace of God, verses 30 through 32. And so I see that, and I'm reminded of how he presented the passage And so it all comes together in this way, to Tim's point. Obviously, the Lord's doing all that, but it was so cool from my perspective, and I'm not even preaching that weekend, to see it all come together in a way that wasn't forced.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming up with a fun little unbiblical term that we can now take as gospel, but it does help God's actual words stand out. And hopefully the waters are less muddy when it comes to thinking about discipleship.
Right.
Because we could sit here and talk for 3 hours on how the grace of God is an all-encompassing term, in my opinion.
Right.
Well, I
That
appreciate
speaks to the whole council.
the idea that you were rebutting the idea that it's just two people kind of going back and forth at it and having their own conversations. It's intentional that there's this person who is the teacher, if you want to call it, and then who is the disciple. I think that plays a key role in understanding what we're called to do as believers, but then what Jesus was obviously doing with his disciples. And that puts the word discipleship more into context, instead of just having fellowship, or instead of just having conversations with one another, or instead of just getting together for coffee. There's this more intentional component that Jesus is, again, the ultimate teacher. I mean, there in verse 31, it says, for he was teaching his disciples and telling them while they're walking down the road. Then it goes on and continues, and they get into it. And then there's the teaching moment with the kid. So every single thing that Jesus was doing is intentional with this discipleship in mind for his 12 disciples and everybody else who's around him.
Right.
And so for us, when I look at you as pastor of discipleship and you're challenging us as a congregation, who are you discipling, or who is discipling you? I think that puts it into a little bit better perspective to see that model of what Jesus laid out for us.
And well, go ahead if you.
Well, I was just thinking, and it challenges our culture too, because it seems to me, and I'm generalizing when I say this, that within our culture, there's a certain sense of, if you were to have the audacity to think that you could disciple me, that it's not a mutual thing, then I view you as arrogant, and therefore I reject you, right? And there's also a certain struggle of parity and equality and all that, so that how can it be that you are discipling me, but I'm also not discipling you? And you would hate to say that, so that you have to put the one anothering in there, right? Like, all of that is in our culture. So here's the Lord doing that. He sets the tone for us. And we can argue and say, well, it's God, so that's why he can do that. But yet he does tell us to go and make disciples and teach them to observe all things whatsoever commanded you, right? So his Spirit is going to indwell us. He's going to provide what is needed for that to happen. And he's already established a model for us to trust him in. So am I inferior or superior or adequate or inadequate, or all of those things, they begin to move to the wayside, because I am recognizing, no, wait a minute, this is what the Lord is asking me to do. He'll enable me to do that. And he's not asking me to go further than where he's taken me, and then sharing that with another. So now it brings about a sense of humility. It brings about a certain sense of dependence and trust in him, which all then discipleship is constantly pointing people to the Lord, right? If I'm adequate in myself, I can actually point people to myself, and they become disciples of Tim, as opposed to, no, what we're looking for here is disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm just, I love that term, helping. And I was talking to a guy in our church who went through this with his community group. And he said, as they were talking about this helping word here, someone said, well, isn't that what the Spirit of God, isn't that something that said he's the helper? He's called alongside to help. And so it's in that kind of mindset where we step into another person's life and begin to be used by the Lord to accomplish something that he's trying to do. This is absolutely amazing that we could be used in that way.
I don't want to go down too much of a bunny trail, but the idea of this discipleship component is probably more common in Jesus's culture, of the rabbi, and the teacher, and a follower, herd of cats that would follow the teacher around and study and learn from them. And there's the scripture, I can't remember where it is, but I think it was in Paul's writing. He's like, you guys are saying I'm of so and so, and I'm of so and so, and so there's this culture of that people be attached to the teacher. Here we don't have that. And so there is this concern of, I don't want to be elevated so high that they're viewing that they're learning from me. So there's the element of humility, for the teacher. So we have the ultimate model of Jesus to follow.
Yes.
of his humility. And then there's the humility of somebody who is the disciple to come alongside of that as well. So it's a cultural thing. I'm just kind of verbally inventing what's in my head right now of just that cultural times are different.
Well, and in Jesus' day and age, there was a tremendous value in following somebody. But then the question was, who were you going to choose to follow? I work with teens now. I'm a young person myself. Now the culture is, I don't even follow anybody.
Right.
You kidding me?
Right.
Hey, if you want to follow me, great. But otherwise, I'll do my thing. Like that is the different element of the culture. And so that's why I appreciate this idea of this definition, appropriating the grace of God. The grace of God is something that already exists. You're not summoning it. You're not creating it. This idea of discipleship is not you are an origin or that person is a destination. It's just helping discover what's already there and appropriate it in your life. And so that's such a, in my mind, it suggests the pressure's off, but the responsibility's on in a fun way, in an encouraging way, ultimately because of the Spirit of God. And so that's an awareness issue. Like this kind of a thing, why I've continued to stew on it and plastered it on my computer screen is because it helps in my mind build a sound theology of discipleship and point me back to God instead of man's ways or whatever I might say is discipleship.
And here's another cool thing in my mind. So, we look at this and we see the Lord teaching his disciples and he's trying to help them with, guys, your thinking is wrong. This whole, I'm the greatest, right? Like your thinking is wrong and it needs to be thinking God's thoughts after him, which is humility is what that is. So we're talking about this in the standpoint of being a discipler that requires a certain amount of humility. I cannot actually do something in the life of a person at the heart level. Only God can do that. That's going to mean some humility, right? But the same is also true for the one being discipled. It's going to require some humility. And it's interesting, every culture, not just generation, but every culture has within it those barriers that prohibit us at some level from following after the Lord. And we're going to have to decide if we're going to walk in humility and seek after discipleship, right? Because there is a value there that's in front of us. I don't know of too many individuals. In fact, I might even say I don't know of any individuals that have actually, I would describe them as spiritually mature individuals who haven't been in some kind of discipleship relationship. And I'm actually saying that from both sides, because we all know that if you're discipling somebody, you're also growing, right? Yeah. Like you're learning a lot from that. If you're being discipled, you're growing. There's just something about that interdependence that the Lord has created. It's part of body function that helps us on in this maturing process, right? But if we buy into the lie that I don't need this, who are you to think this way towards me? Then that becomes a little bit of a barrier. And in our pride, I don't need this kind of stuff. Right. So we miss out, right? Until God does such a work in our hearts, like what he's doing in the disciples' hearts, because he's got to bring about a change of thinking for us to be able to say, okay, Lord, I see what you're saying there. Sometimes the school of hard knocks is what's being used to kind of knock that pride down a little bit, right?
And so from the perspective of the content of our passage, that humility is a key content of the disciples and thinking who's the greatest, right? And then being up on the mountain potentially, you're just kind of just guessing. What are they arguing about? What are they thinking about?
What's fresh in their mind,
and very possible, right? So from the content of what lesson is Jesus trying to teach them? And so he's telling them that he's going to die. Right? We're past this hinge point in the book of Mark, and they still aren't getting it. You mentioned that very from the top, that they're not getting it. And instead of them really stewing and wrestling with that statement, they're wrestling with who's the greatest. So the Jesus is probably, if there's another eye roll moment, probably was here again for them of just like, what is going on here? And so how we can take these lessons from what Jesus is teaching the disciples, as we're talking about discipleship humility, there's the overall humility as well of just, not to get so puffed up and to recognize that where is our place? That, like we're not, we don't need to worry about being the greatest, right? Because this is all temporal, right? Like you pointed out where these disciples, where they ended up, like did they become the greatest here in this earthly kingdom? No, not at all.
Not even happened.
So the content to me, so I'm just taking our conversation, just
Right.
that content that Jesus is teaching them, I think is still really relevant for us today as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's timeless. It's relevant for everyone, for sure.
And so like Tim labeled it kind of the weekend as learning grace from the master. This is 21 verses. And he also provided 9 questions for further study. So again, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And it's just another reminder that, yes, there's so much there, but again, all the more reason to bring it down to the basic truth, the basic reminder that we're understanding what it means to follow Jesus, see him as mighty Messiah and suffering servant, and then apply that in our own lives. That is discipleship. And so to be able to do that and go to yet another, to your point, narrative that does give us a vivid demonstration of who Jesus is, that is the very same thing we need when we are sitting across that meal from somebody else and we're feeling defeated, down, desperate in the valley. We need a vivid demonstration of Jesus and a reminder of who he is.
Well, and here, go back to the disciples. He tells them he's going to die, but be raised again, right? And they are afraid to ask. They don't understand, but they're afraid to ask. Wouldn't it have been wonderful in hindsight looking at this going, if you were humble, right? Saying, you know what, Lord, you've said this to us already. We're slow. We're slow.
Right.
We're not getting it, right? Could you help us? We're just not getting it, right? In humility, just acknowledging the truth and trusting him. What a difference that would have been for them as opposed to where they went. So then, again, not throwing rocks because of glass houses. Would that not also be true for us? You know what, Lord? These are things that, okay, you take this phrase right here, right? Like, is helping another appropriate the grace of God. Any aspect of that I don't understand, what if I were to take that same humble position and say, you know what, Lord, I don't get that. Would you help me to understand that? Work in my heart what actually it means, the grace of God. Sure. Because we're so limited as believers, stereotyping, we're so limited in our understanding of that. When it's something that actually will be part of our eternal journey with the Lord, the grace of God will be revealed to us more and more throughout all of eternity. So don't think you're going to get it all here on the earth, but in humility, okay, Lord, would you teach my heart? Just take me another little mile down the road on this one. But again, just like the disciples did not do that in that text, stereotyping so often, we don't do it either. So God graciously keeps coming back around, keeps coming back around, keeps coming back around, allows the difficulties in the school of hard knocks to help us with this stuff so that our hearts are much more pliable for the things that he's trying to teach us, right, and grow. And at the end of the day, we just bow down before him because we realize we've seen enough of our own hearts to know I got some significant problems here, right? So anything that's happening is because God is the one who's bringing that about, and he gets all the glory for that kind of stuff. And we worship him as a result of that. This is amazing stuff, isn't it?
Yes. It's good. I'll answer that question.
Yes, it is. So I got to tell you this. Okay, so I remember I was holding the little booklet up the whole time. And so we had about 150 of those here in the building. We have 10 left over.
No way.
Like there was a run on. Wow. And so we originally started out with 500 of them. By the time I talked about it, we had 150. Now we only have 10. And there are people who've been texting me like, hey, where are they? We didn't get them. Because they were scattered out in different places, like different locations. So we're actually
scavenger hunt.
Yeah, there you go. Go get them, boys. But we've actually ordered some. I think we're supposed to get in 50 to 100 this week. And then I think by December 1st, we should have a lot more, like 200 more. And then we should have 500 before Christmas. So if people are looking for them, they're coming. Just hang on. And the other thing is you can actually go online and get it digitally.
There you go.
Thank you. So if you like it in paper, it's...
Do you know where online? Because I was about ready to ask that
question. Yes, if you go to our FBC website and then you go to the discipleship page, and then as you scroll down through there, you'll see it's called discipleship modules. It'll be a click on box, and you can click on that and bring it right up. I don't know if you
Cool.
see it right there real quick, but
well,
it's pretty easy to
so
get.
discipleship is under About Us.
Yes.
And then discipleship is there.
Yeah.
Discipleship modules book is like right there.
There you go.
On the homepage of that. So absolutely. So people like me who don't believe in paper anymore.
Yes.
I need the digital version. Absolutely. So it's there. So you don't have to kill the trees to disciple somebody.
Yes.
So there you go.
FBCVA.org/discipleship. It pops right up. So it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Francis, what do we want to point people towards? I know the holiday season's quickly approaching.
Holiday season
Follow
is
the stars.
approaching. So we kind of think of it in terms of Christmas at Fellowship. There's many things that are going on. And last week on Sermon Spotlight, Abby did a great job of explaining that as well. But the upcoming things would be hanging of the greens in just a week and a half, basically, on Monday the 24th. That's the Monday before Thanksgiving, because we're going to start then celebrating Christmas right after Thanksgiving.
And that's helping decorate our campus.
It's a great time of connecting with people to decorate our campus, but also a time of celebration, a time of worship, to acknowledge that, hey, this is the Lord's place, and we get a chance to do this together and collectively as a body of Christ. So that's on Monday night. And then, Follow the Stars right around the corner, so you can help with the parade. The week after that, hanging in the greens on that Monday when the Winchester Parade is going on. Then Follow the Stars the next weekend. Different ministries around here doing Christmas celebrations. There's a whole slew of things. Then obviously we'll get to Christmas Eve where there's 3 services. So that the holiday season is coming up soon. And thanks for people who came to do the workday last Saturday to kind of help get the campus ready for the decorations. And there's just... Obviously, there's tons of things going on. There's even like a special BTC class that's happening, right, in December, and something for. I'm reading all kinds of things that people are honing in Christmas time. So it's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. Do you know too? Okay, so today is Veterans Day,
right?
Are we celebrating that on Sunday? Do you know?
Good question. We meant to do something last week as a worship ministry, and most years we at least acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And the prayer time would typically go down that path. We didn't.
Yeah.
Instead, last week we hit more on that International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. So thanks for keying in on that, and having Joshua Kubu here in town a few weeks ago. We were able to kind of capture his thoughts for that. Yeah. So instead of keying in on Veterans Day, we as a worship team, we decided to go down that route.
Yeah. So at least from us here, a shout out to our veterans.
Absolutely.
Thank them for serving us, for serving our country. And I always, I had forgotten, honestly, and I just feel terrible about that in that sense. Yeah. But I tell you, people who have sacrificed some years of their life for us, some people, of course, have sacrificed their life. Yeah. And we're the richer country as a result of all that stuff. It's great.
It is true. I mean, the difference of Veterans Day and Memorial Day, Veterans Day is acknowledging the people who are still alive, right?
Right.
And so, we don't want anybody to feel slighted that the church didn't acknowledge that. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. Definitely.
It's good. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for bringing the word. MF, love you, man.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. We'll keep everything on your radar over the next couple of weeks as we embrace the Christmas at Fellowship and everything that you can be a part of. You can find all that info at fbcva.org. The fact of the matter, everybody, is that sermons are not meant to just take an hour, but rather transform a lifetime. Until next week, much love. God bless.